Okay, we'll start with tutorial 2. Now I did want to make a point that I missed in the first tutorial to this part. When we're creating a new game, you should actually go to the game section and click on this create a new game section. I didn't do that yesterday. I went straight to the kit section and opened the game from there, which would actually modify the kit itself. So what we need to do is click on create a new game. If there's a kit that we want, like the Crash Course kit, we select it here and click on next. Then we give this a name. So we're doing tutorial 2 here for the computing gaming class in Hellyer College, but available to basically anybody on YouTube. And then we've got the choice of what sort of screen size we're going to use, which is here, and create. Okay, so what I'll do now is set up all the stuff that I've done previously, and then we'll get back into the tutorial from that point there. So what I've done is I've set up both Mambo and Pronger, so they had the behaviours that we organised yesterday, or in the last tutorial. Might have been 5 minutes ago, who knows. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we need to combine all of these elements. So we've got a couple of actors that can do things. They collide with one another, which means we can create events that happen. We have sounds that occur once there's jumping and stomping going on. We've got a tile set that we can deal with that has collision properties, and we've got the behaviours in. Now, for all of these sorts of things to come together, we actually need a scene. So a scene is essentially where things take place. So currently this game has no scenes, as seen in the dashboard to the left hand side. But to create a scene, we simply click here and we create a new scene. So I'm going to call this the main game screen, because essentially this Crash Course sort of idea only has one screen. It's only to give you an idea of where we go. Now it has a width of 20 tiles. Now the tiles themselves are 32 pixels wide by 32 pixel high. So this is the screen we're giving it. We're going, there's going to be 20 tiles in it, and there's going to be 12 high. So that's what we have to build with. Now if you want a background colour, you can have a solid colour and select one of the colours that are there. Okay, so that will give me a solid colour of that in the background. But it does give you the ability to use no colour, so if you wanted it to be transparent, or a vertical gradient. So if we want a vertical gradient, you can create some nice sort of sky effects. So we'll start with a pale blue, and we'll go down to a deep blue. Okay, and at this point we just create the scene. And that'll bring it up here for us. Okay, so you can see it starts at a nice light and comes down. You'll see automatically once we go into the screen mode, we're using essentially a style of editor that looks a bit like Microsoft Paint or some other sort of similar idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a very basic scene. I'm not going to go into too depth here. I'm just going to essentially have a level playing field. We do that by selecting the tile we want. So you can see this one sort of has a curved edge to the left hand side, making it a neat place to have sort of start points. I generally like to stick in my start and end sections, and then I'll fill it by selecting these tiles. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm just clicking on the tiles to the right, and then I'm clicking onto the screen here, or clicking and dragging, and it fills it in. So there we have it. Now do note that it's not simply the thing where you grab an empty tile over here and put it into if you've made a mistake. You actually do need to do some deletion, etc. But currently we'll just go through the basic sort of stuff and work with it. So what I've done is I've created a basic scene. We've got some grass, we've got a couple of pits, so Mambo's got to watch out where he jumps. Now you'll see here that there are two sections. There's tiles and actors. So if I go to actors and click on it, it brings up our two actors that we have available. Now I'm going to select Pronger first, and I'm going to stick some Prongers into the scene. Now you can freeform it and put your Pronger wherever you want. So I can put him there if I want and click on him and put it. But if you hold down the Shift key, Pronger will snap two things. So it will actually make him look like He's standing nice and solidly on the ground to start with. You will eventually, if you start the game without doing this, the prompt will fall to the tile because that'll be the first thing that he collides with and stop on the tile itself. But essentially I'll put in 4 or 5, 5 that I've got there, and then we'll stick in our hero Mambo who starts on the side. Again, shift will lock him into place. Okay, so I've got our Mambo. We don't want more than one Mambo because Mambo is essentially our player, and who they're going to be. Now there are some specific things about this scene that I have not included to show you the effects of what happens and how we've got to apply different things. So you can see at the top here, we've got a scene, we've got some behaviours, we've got events, physics, background and properties. We'll go through these shortly, but essentially once I've got it in place, I'm going to test the scene. Okay, so we'll wait until it brings us up the scene itself. And here we have our scene. Now I can move Mambo left and right using the left and right keys, and I can jump. Now essentially I should be able to jump from this point up and land on him and stomp. So we'll see what happens once I hit the jump key. So I'm moving and I jump, and suddenly Mambo's gone through the top of the screen. So there's something awry in the way that we've organised this scene. So our scene is simply a picture. Behaviours, scenes can have behaviours, so in future tutorials we'll look at this, but things like keeping score and what's going on throughout different scenes, etc., we will have scene behaviours that handle that. Events are essentially things that you want to tweak within the particular scene and program yourself. Now, physics. Okay, we've got physics in here which give us our horizontal gravity, so in other words our left to right. And you can choose which way the gravity is going to pull. So if you want to be pulling people left to right across the screen, then you can add some gravity here. Now in this version it's like a side scroller or a platformer, and what we want is to apply gravity down. Okay, so down is selected, but it's set to 0, and that's why Mambo shot through the top of the screen. He jumped, but there was no gravity to pull him back down. And if you remember back to the previous tutorial, we actually set that Mambo would be affected by gravity. Now, Earth gravity is set at about 85, so that's your standard that you go by. The more gravity you have, the less high you'll jump. The less gravity you have, the higher you'll jump. So you can have a play with those figures in there. Once we adapt that, that's fine. Now there's a background option. You can actually put background pictures in it, and I'll show you how to do that in a future tutorial, but we're not going to be doing it for the crash course. And we've got the final, the properties, which is essentially what we set up to start with, so you can go in and alter those sorts of things. Okay, so we'll go back to our scene. Everything's all good. We'll test the scene again. We've put some gravity in. It's about Earth standard gravity. As far as you can tell what Earth standard gravity is in a game like this. Move him along and jump. Land on him, pop. Now to make sure our die and pit and reload is working, I fall into a pit and there you go, you can see the characters all come up again. Okay. Now you'll see I just pushed him over there, so I've got to be careful. Okay, no big fanfare ending the game. We have to build those sorts of things into it, and we'll do that in future tutorials, but you can see here that we've gone through, we've taken the basics, we've used actors, we've applied behaviours to them, which are programmable things that can be used across different types of actors. So once you've created one behaviour, like moving left and right, you can apply it to other types of characters. What you need to do is apply all the behaviours that you require. So Mambo had the jump behaviour, he died when he fell into a pit and reloaded. The game, he could jump, he could stomp on things and walk left and right. Now all that we needed Pronger to do was to be able to be stomped on. Okay, so the only behaviour we gave him was stompable, and we applied that as we went. Then we created the scene, put in a very basic sort of step. Now we could have created a scene where we've got floating platforms and all that sort of stuff, but really just for the crash course we're just trying to show it. And then what we did is we applied these sorts of things to the game and tested it to make sure that it did what we wanted it to. All of these sorts of events rely on collisions, so if Mambo didn't collide with tile sets as a player, he would fall straight through the ground once there was gravity there. Again, the same with Pronger, he needs to collide with the tile set. Now when Mambo lands on a Pronger, he collides with it and it creates that event where it becomes stompable. So these are the things that you need to consider when you start working with your games. The further you get into Stencyl, the more complicated it becomes. However, it is a very versatile environment to be working in, and similar to actual code programming. Now you can see, if we go in here and we have a look at one of our characters, we go Mambo. We work with our behaviours, so we'll have a look at one of these. We'll say that we're going to edit the stomp on enemies behaviour. Okay, and you can see that there's a fair bit of, in essence, tile sets coding, which is what you do within Stencyl, selecting these sorts of things. Okay, I'm not going to run through all of this as it is. However, in realistic code, this is the code that makes it slightly more simple for you to use Stencyl as an introduction to programming. But essentially this here is mirrored in the actual code that lays underneath it. So this is actual programming code that goes and gets run by the computer, and it comes directly from this. So hopefully that's helped you get a start on Stencyl. The next tutorials I'll be doing will more than likely be on behaviours and how we build them, how we do particular bits of coding, etc., and working on creating our actors as sort of fully fledged little characters for our own games. Thanks for watching.